Today, I'm going to talk to you about investing in short-term real estate and about my own personal experience investing in my first short-term rental property. I like to use this as an example for individuals that have entrepreneurial interests that are looking to create a little more intentionality in their life, maybe get a little bit of time back. This is an example of the type of investment that can begin to open those doors for you. It can, with a little bit of work, a little bit of luck, help you generate returns that you wouldn't see in traditional investments like the stock market or the bond market. And often the main roadblock keeping people from doing these kind of investments is simply that they've not experienced it before. They don't know what to look for. They haven't met anybody that has done this kind of thing before. And hopefully today I can shed a little bit of light on this topic and help you to feel more excited to explore alternative investments if that's something that you would be interested in the future. As a financial and a business coach, I leverage my experience as a CEO and entrepreneur to help people change their money mindset to be more intentional and strategic so that they can live the lives that they truly desire. I collaborate with people to help gain a greater sense of control, clarity, and mastery over their money, which in turn impacts all of the areas of life. How do I do this? Well, I help to empower people by looking at their financial health through the lens of a business. I think that in order to live our lives to the fullest, we have to start on the inside. We have to start with our mindset and our beliefs. We must embrace a growth mindset and recognize that in order to evolve into those best versions of ourselves, we have to learn to be intentional and proactive versus continually reacting to the world around us and winging it. As it relates to a life where you're thriving, money is vitally important. It's an important topic, and it's also a taboo topic. Many families don't discuss this very much. If you're lucky, maybe you have a friend or two that you can share your journey with. But often the result is that we feel alone and we feel a lack of confidence on this journey because we don't really have a sense of how we're doing. So join me now as we discuss the economics of short-term rental investing and real estate as an alternative investment to the more standard forms of investing like stocks and bonds. Anyone can learn to run a business like this, and with some planning and genuine interest, you could explore this as one piece of your path toward financial freedom. So in 2019, I invested in my first short-term rental property. It was 2,000 miles away from my home. I bought it without ever seeing it in person, mostly through FaceTime videos and Zillow. And I now operate it from 2,000 miles away from home in about 4 hours per week, I estimate. Have you ever rented a property through Airbnb or VRBO? If so, then you can probably picture what the customer side of this type of a business is like. And what I'll do now is I'll share with you a little bit about what the owner's side, or the landlord side of this type of a business is all about, to give you the full picture on what you could expect if this is something you want to embark on in the future. So I'm going to share my screen here, and I'm going to walk us through my experience operating a short-term rental property through some of the operating considerations I took into account before investing and after investing once I started operating. We'll talk about the economics of the type of business, and that'll be about it. So the property that I purchased was in Truckee, California. That's about 20 minutes north of the Lake Tahoe area. And I researched over a year to find this property. A big part of the draw for me personally was that I have always been interested in real estate. I was interested 20 years ago, but my career, took me in different places and put my focus in different areas. And finally, I had the opportunity to save up enough money and made the decision to allocate certain savings to this endeavor to purchase a property in one of my favorite areas in the country and use it as a rental property to generate investment income, but also to serve as a place to take my family and a place to go on adventures, which was just always a dream of mine. And I would emphasize to anybody that's interested in any type of investing to explore what you like. What do you want to learn more about? What is interesting to you? And if it's not interesting to you, that's no big deal. You can invest more passively like most employees do in a 401k plan or a Roth IRA plan. And set it and forget it, and that's perfectly fine as well. But if you are the type of person that's interested in these types of alternative investments, short-term or long-term rental properties can be a really great, lucrative mini business to start, investment to start. So this is a view of the Airbnb page from my property in Truckee, California. I've had a good start. I've got perfect 5-star reviews in my first 69 visits on Airbnb. I'll talk about where else I've rented the property from, but primarily Airbnb has been my source of sales. They have a great platform. It's highly trafficked. And in particular, in the type of area that I'm in, this has been a really powerful platform to drive sales. So to start with, like I said, it took me over a year to find the property that I liked. I had identified 3 different markets where I wanted to potentially invest. One of them was the Lake Tahoe area. One of them was the southwest of Florida near Marco Island, which is a family favorite of ours. And another was New Hampshire, where I grew up and where there's a great summer and winter season, both to encourage rentals year round. And I was exploring all of them. I shared here some of the tools that I used for my own investment exploration and research. And I'll start on the left. Well, no, I'll start with the words I wrote. I wrote learn, Zillow. So Zillow, everyone probably knows Zillow at this point. You can go online to Zillow, or if you prefer Redfin or some of the other platforms where they show houses, you can see the entire market. You can see currently for sale houses, previously sold houses, specific sizes, ages of home, yard sizes, whatever your specific interest is. For me, I based my exploration on money, economics. Ultimately, I thought I had no more than about $100,000 to invest in this type of investment, and it was going to be a big investment for me. And so based on the math of buying houses, I had an idea that I wanted to buy something around $500,000 and put a 20% down payment, which is $100,000. And so that's how I defined my initial parameters. As I looked and didn't find, I found a lot of houses that I liked, but I didn't find that one. I didn't really ever have the moment until February of 2019 where I felt like I found the house, and it just something inside of me felt right. But in the meantime, I explored Zillow regularly. There's a wonderful website and podcast called Bigger Pockets. It's a community of interested investors, real estate investors. You can learn a tremendous amount about investing as a whole, but also with Bigger Pockets, you can get into different markets and you can learn about specific markets. You can ask questions, learn from people's experiences in those markets. AirDNA is a paid subscription service where you can pick a few different markets and they can give you really detailed information on average short-term rents, occupancy rates, trends, projections for the future in those markets, information even about regulations for short-term rentals, which is an important consideration when researching any location. Has that town imposed regulations on whether or not short-term rentals are allowed? And if so, what would those look like? For example, another of my favorite areas is San Diego, California, but they have really strict restrictions on short-term rental properties now. And I don't think you can rent out a house for under 30 days at this juncture. And there might be some rules with grandfathered houses or people that were doing short-term rentals before the restrictions were imposed, but those are becoming commonplace. Let's say they're becoming more normal in certain markets. So it's just something to be aware of. And then I listed Rich Dad Poor Dad. This is a book. It's an older book. It's from when I was in college. And it's a great starter to the mindset required to step away from, quote, the rat race, to start to take control of your time and your money and think about how you invest your precious money to maximize returns and get you to that financial freedom path goal line sooner if that's what you want. So research is really critical here. Next, we're going to talk about the economics of a short-term rental. So this is a page that I share from time to time. I'll walk us through it, but I took a look at how I think about an investment in short-term real estate versus the stock market. If I wanted to put $100,000 in the stock market or into this idea of running a short-term real estate business. And so I'm just going to walk from the top to the bottom on this page here. The initial investment of $100,000. That's about that is what I invested. This is all factual, what I'm sharing here for my last year of business. And I anticipate it took about 160 hours all in. So that's 4 weeks of hard work. I didn't do it all in 4 weeks. I spread it out probably over 4 months. But this includes the research component that I talked about, which went back even further than 4 months. But then this includes, once you make the decision, you want to explore a market, talking to a realtor, looking at different houses, whether it's virtual like I did or in person if you're in the same area, and ultimately making the purchase, negotiating the purchase, closing on the purchase, buying furniture, renovating your house, doing all the things that are setting up your Airbnb, doing all listing, your Airbnb listing. So all the things that would be required to put your house on the market and rent it out to your first short-term rental customer. So after that 160 hours, I anticipate that I spend about 4 hours a week now. A couple times a year, I want to get to the property and do what's necessary, fix things up if needed, get new furniture if needed, things like that. But overall, I think about 4 hours a week is sufficient, and that's to manage personally customer bookings, communicating with customers, communicating with my key helpers, my cleaner and my handyman, my key employees, if you will. And that's it. And so what I show here in the third row underneath the heading investment profile short-term real estate is annual return, $74,000. So what I experienced in the first year of operations was a $74,000 return on this property. And we'll talk about the different components of that return. But that is pretty substantial on a $100,000 investment. Granted, I did put in the time, 160 hours is important to consider. But if we were to compare my annual return of $74,000 with an investment comparison for stocks, which is the next row, which historically returns 7%, $100,000 would generate $7,000 in stocks. And so the row below that does the subtraction where I say, okay, if I earned 74,000 and I would have earned 7,000, let's say in the stock market, the additional income I generated compared to a more passive approach was $67,000. And what I'm going to share next is simply a way that I look at that $67,000 where I say, okay, so if the safe 7% of the return, 7,000 was in comparison to stocks and the rest of the money was incremental. If I put 150 hours in per year to work on this business investment, this short-term rental business, and I do the math dividing $67,000 by 150 hours, I can make about $450 per hour on this investment. That's just one way to look at it. I don't mean to confuse things, but factually speaking, this is one way I could slice this pie and feel that I've created an income stream where my hours, my effort is well compensated. Next, we're going to go to the second page of the economics of a short-term rental here. So the house that I found was $550,000. Ultimately, I was able to put 10% down on the house, not 20%. And so I put $55,000 down. And then the house had some carpeting I wanted to replace with wood floors. We painted the entire house, did some renovations like that. And then we had to buy furniture for a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house. And so overall, I invested about $100,000 in the project. If I scroll down here, when I talk about potential returns, and I say that I experienced a 67% return, or 74% return, $74,000 on $100,000 on the last slide. The table here shows about how this breaks out. When you invest in short-term real estate, there are multiple ways that your investment returns money to you. And so I'm going to talk about the 3 main ways that your investment returns money to you. with two columns, with an average column saying this is what I kind of estimated that the property would do for me, and an upside column, which was a little closer to what I actually experienced due to the timing of when I invested in the real estate market. Pre-COVID, the market went up. I didn't anticipate any of that as my investment basis in my research, but showing you here what the upside could be on an investment like this. So we'll start with appreciation. So when you buy a property, on average, a house historically has returned 1.5% to 2% per year on the value of the house. It's grown somewhat in line with inflation, maybe even a little bit less. And so on a $550,000 property, that would tell me at 2% appreciation, the average growth of the value of the house would be $11,000. In a crazy real estate market like we've experienced recently, that growth could be as high as $150,000 or more per year, which is 30% or so of the value of the house. And so we're not going to factor it. The upside is what it is, and it's a beautiful thing, but let's stick with the averages as we think about future investments. And that's what I will do, at least. The second way that your investment returns money is that your guests pay down your mortgage. And so every month, as long as you're making more cash than your expenses, including your mortgage, your value of your loan to the bank, your mortgage, goes down. And over the course of a year, it'll go down about $10,000 at first. That number will only get bigger over time as well, where down the road, 15, 20 years, if you have a 30-year mortgage, more and more of your monthly mortgage payment is going to principal, not interest. So that's actually a growing cash net worth benefit. And the third piece of the pie is cash flow. And so this is the operations of your business, of your short-term rental property. And so I anticipated from the economics that I had learned about through the bigger pockets of research and talking to other short-term rental owners, that I could expect at least about $10,000 in cash flow, meaning that the revenue that came in minus the expenses I had to pay, including the mortgage, would leave me $10,000 in cash. On the right side of the table here with the upside column, we can see that cash flow could be as high as $70,000 if you really knock it out of the park with your business, with your revenue amounts, your average nightly rate, with your occupancy, things like that we'll talk about. And so overall, I see that on the low end, the return on the investment I expected was about 30%, and on the high end, it could be 230% in a crazy real estate market. So here we're going to look at the income statement for a business like this, and I'm going to keep the same idea here, where the left column would be your average and the right column would be your upside. And so if we were to rent out this property, and I have two scenarios here, what I expected and then what actually happened, what I expected on the left, what actually happened on the right. But I thought that based on statistics, if I could have about a 2/3 occupancy at $315 per night, I could make $75,000 in gross income here in the left column, the average scenario. Going down to expenses, sticking in the left column, I knew what my mortgage would be. There's a local tax rate for short-term rentals. I was able to anticipate utilities, cleaning costs, property tax, miscellaneous. I took an estimate for miscellaneous charges, assuming $250 a month on, the faucet leaking and needing to get the handyman. And then association fees, which exist in my property. So I thought cash expenses on the average could be about $73,000. And so I thought, and I would have been happy with more or less breaking even from a cash flow perspective on this investment in the early years, because I knew that I'd still gain appreciation and my mortgage would be paid down. And that those two items alone could be $20,000 a year. And if my investment was $100,000, that's still a 20% return. What ended up happening was that I was able to rent the property almost full time, about 86% of the year, for a higher nightly rate than I thought. and I was able to bring in about $130,000 in gross income. My expenses stayed somewhat similar. My cleaning costs went up because I had more cleaning visits. My local tax went up because it's based on your revenue. And overall, I saw about a profit of $43,000. As I look forward, I could see an upside still to about $70,000 if I'm able to raise my rates like I think I can. But this shows you just a breakdown of how an income statement would look. And for those of you who haven't been involved in business, this is similar to any income statement. An income statement is a very basic framework to analyze any business that shows your sales at the top, your expenses at the bottom. You have a personal income statement. Hopefully you've explored that a little bit, but the concepts around business and being able to analyze investments like a business are all learnable, and they can give you a powerful framework to do this type of work for yourself in the future. So to set up this business, I shared that I looked for about a year for a property, and finally one day we were on vacation in Florida. I saw the property. I just saw it on Zillow. I immediately knew that it felt right. The price felt right. So my wife and I put in a bid right away, the day that we started talking about it, and somebody outbid us. And that person came in with a higher offer. Ultimately, they went above asking price, and we were right at asking price. But we were encouraged to put in a secondary backup offer, which I didn't think stood a chance. Ultimately, however, the initial person had to back out. They didn't have the financing lined up like they said they did. So we got the property as a backup offer. So that's just a note to keep in mind for yourself. But once we made the purchase, we had to negotiate furniture. I bought some furniture from the owner of the property, kept some bunk beds, a queen bed, a couple things like that, but immediately had to go out to Truckee and start to buy furniture for the house. So we had a small budget for that. I figured it'd be about $10,000 to $15,000, and I had already set that aside as part of the investment. And then we had some renovations we had to do, put in hardwood floors. So that took a few weeks to do all the hardwood floors and painting the entire house. And then I had to set up the platforms. So I set up on Airbnb, on VRBO, and then 6 months later on an independent site called HomeRez that I'll talk about just for a minute because I don't use it very much. But ultimately with Airbnb and VRBO, you just have to set up descriptions of the property, and you have to take pictures and load pictures of the property. And you can set up a property probably within an hour and you're off and running. It's pretty incredible how technology can support you these days. HomeRez is an independent platform where as you begin to have customers, or if you want to advertise your business on social media or other ways like that, instead of having to pay fees to go through Airbnb to book the property, you can send a customer a link to your own HomeRez site, and they can book right through your site. So you mostly can save fees as the benefit for HomeRez. However, the visibility isn't there like it is with Airbnb and VRBO. I do about 90% plus of my business through Airbnb. I did more through VRBO early on, but my Airbnb reviews have been so strong, and I think just the platform has taken off so much since they went public that the eyeballs are just there for Airbnb. And so that was basically the setup that I needed to go through. And that took me a couple months, longer than it actually should have. But ultimately, I got set up. I was able to get my first rental, and I started going. Operations. So I'm just going to run through the different operations components that you're going to want to consider if you invest in an Airbnb. The first and most important above all else is your cleaner. We found a great cleaner who is so reliable. They're expensive, and I've moved away from them twice now to try to find more cost-effective solutions. However, you get what you pay for. And so these cleaners that I ended up sticking with long-term, that I've gone back to multiple times, are my strongest partner. and I couldn't do it without them. And unless you live in the area where you are going to be renting your property or want to clean your property, even if you do live in the area, I would suggest that this is the most important relationship you need to build, and it's important to treat them with respect and courtesy, and always go above and beyond where you can with your cleaners, because they are the backbone of your business. The second is your handyman or handy woman. This is the person that you're going to need in emergencies. And so I have somebody that I've formed a relationship with now. I've used a couple handymen over the time, and you're always going to be able to find people to help you. Don't let this stop you, but find someone you can trust and rely on. And they're going to be your secondary solution when the cleaner probably lets you know something's broken when they go to visit, that this is where you're going to go next. Next, we'll go to specialist technicians, like appliance repair people. Just generally make some notes about what you do in case you need somebody to come check on your chimney or your appliances. You can find that stuff easily now, though, and I didn't have that lined up early on, and I still don't have it perfectly lined up because I don't know what could happen. I might need a roof person, and I don't have that right now, but I'm confident that between myself and my handyman or my cleaner, I can get a referral. Next, if you want a property manager, that's the kind of person that could potentially help you manage your Airbnb listing and work with customers. I've chosen to do that myself because personally, for me, coming from a retail background, running retail businesses, that customer experience component is so pivotal. And I always put on my best face when I'm talking to customers, and I know how to not bite my tongue, I guess. I might bite my tongue in other areas of life, but with this game, with these relationships, it's really important to be polite and respectful to the extent possible. And I trust myself in that regard, so I handle that myself. You might be able to get a property manager though for $150 a month. So for your income statement for your business, multiply that by 12 and you've got an expected cost every year. $1,800, you know, something probably nominal, actually, maybe more expensive for a more comprehensive service. Airbnb management, customer management. So there are other platforms that'll manage your Airbnb listings as well, who promote themselves as professionals. I just shared how I manage that myself. That's an area I feel that I can confidently juggle with my other work as a coach and developing online courses, things like that. But just to keep in mind that you can explore options like that. Other platforms for operations. So I mentioned HomeRez, and that's just one option, but there are other platforms outside of Airbnb and VRBO that you can explore. But from everything I've experienced, I think your customer base, the customer base for this market is largely in these Airbnb and VRBO. It really is. Until you have returning customers that want to work directly through you, save the fees that you can send to a HomeRez site. As long as you get set up on those two platforms, I think you're going to be okay. And then the last note, customer service is key. I already touched on that. Don't need to say much more. So my results. Over the last 2 years, I've got 69 5-star reviews on Airbnb. Currently, our property lists in the top 3 in the Truckee area. We allow pets. I meant to mention that earlier. I think allowing pets and charging a $100 pet fee has been a great idea, even if I've had to pay the cleaner a little bit extra sometimes to clean a pet stain. This is a differentiator. Not shockingly, very few people allow pets, and I think probably 1/4 of the homes in Truckee do. And so that actually helps me. And I have pets. I have a dog, so I'm happy to offer this service. And I just want to suggest it. I have been a super host with Airbnb, and that helps a lot. That helps with customer service working with Airbnb, but also the listings and how high you show up. So it's important to explore that. And really, there's some simple parameters. I did $130,000 in projected. I'm projecting $130,000 in gross revenue this year. And initially, I thought the business would do about $75,000. The main differentiator here, and I meant to share this, I should have shared this more clearly, but if you're still with me, Beyond Pricing is a must-have tool. And if not Beyond Pricing, a pricing tool that automatically prices for you based on demand in your area seasonally. So I didn't use a company like Beyond Pricing right away, and I did all my own pricing. I was manually changing calendar prices, and you'll see that you can set prices through Airbnb. But the beauty of a company like Beyond Pricing is they know your market so well. They know all the booking patterns, the demands. So if you set a base price and a minimum price, they will manage your flows. So for example, in the peak summer months of July and August, and in the peak winter months of December and January, my weekend prices will go as high as $800-900, maybe even $1,000 a night. I wouldn't have known to do that myself, but Beyond Pricing did, and they knew to remind me that a certain portion of my bookings were going to come in the few weeks before certain time periods. And so they helped me to not panic. They helped to give a great dashboard with a score on how well you're doing compared to your market. And they can really keep you on track. So if there's anything I would recommend to drive revenue, it's get an automated pricer as soon as possible, and Beyond Pricing is the one I would recommend. The home value on our property has grown tremendously because of what's been going on in the world and in the United States real estate market in particular. I happened to invest in a boom town, and I didn't know that was going to exist beforehand. I felt strongly that Truckee, California would always be an iconic vacation destination, but the combination of the home value going up and my revenue going up from Beyond Pricing has really made this investment more successful than I could have dreamed. And I think that's possible in so many markets in this country, even with real estate prices having gone up to where they are now. If you do the math, if you set your goals, your targets on what kind of investment you want to make, you might just find an investment that returns more money for you every year than a traditional passive investment would, and is a heck of a lot of fun for you. I'll be saving some files at on my website, fourleafcoaching.com/STR. And you can download a couple tools here. One is called a rental investment comprehensive checklist. And so this is going to outline the main setup and operating items that I talked about today. And the second tool is called a rental investment analysis tool. And this is really for running some basic numbers, putting in the price of the house, the estimated down payment, and starting to factor in what an income statement could look like for you if you were to invest in something like this. Here's the app for Beyond Pricing. It's in the middle here, and all this shows is the dashboard that I manage. And so the Beyond Pricing dashboard shows a base price and a minimum price in the top. And I've changed these. I change them periodically. My minimum price is lower right now than I had it throughout the summer recently. But what happens, you can see below, is that all I have to do is set these two numbers and the system takes over. Beyond Pricing knows how to price for me. So in early December, my prices are lower. At the end of December, my prices are quite high. You can see in green, actually, from December 21 through 31. This is an actual booking. It's two different bookings, actually. Somebody's paying $980, and then someone's paying over $1,000 a night. And down into January, those rates continue because the demand is so high in this market, and Beyond Pricing knows that. And so this ends the discussion for today. These are some pictures of the property and of Truckee, California. I visit with my family when we can. It's beautiful. It's one of my favorite places ever. And so that's why I made the investment. What places do you love? What kind of investments excite you? Those are important things to explore on your journey as you continue to become more empowered around your own path toward financial freedom. If you want to talk about any of these topics around financial empowerment, around investing, around your own path to financial freedom and creating some clarity on that path, reach out to me anytime. My website is www.fourleafcoaching.com. And you can schedule a free 30-minute coaching session with me if you'd like to explore what coaching is all about. There's a button in the top right of my website. Please feel free to sign up as well on the homepage for my weekly newsletter. There's a sign up link where I'll send you a free PDF guide to 4 easy steps to become the CEO of your life. And weekly, I send out different topics around financial freedom, around lifestyle design, and really personal development and empowering you so that you can look forward to your Mondays in the future. And you don't have the Sunday blues like so many of us have experienced at different phases of life. You can take control, you can take the next right step to get yourself on a path that you really look forward to. So thank you. Have a great day.